It's the Harris Football Podcast with your host, Christopher Harris.
Welcome! Hey, everybody! Welcome in. My name is Chris, and this is a show filled with earthly delights. Hello there. Hello. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you're doing great out there, wherever you are in the big, wide world. Thank you for joining me for this series of 3 shows in which we have learned and will continue to learn something about the skill players who will be drafted in the NFL draft beginning 1 week from tonight. If you missed the Yacht Club episode on Monday, it wasn't about the draft, but it was a great one. Ross Tucker joined to discuss with me and Andy what it's like to call an NFL game and how Ross prepares for it. I made a plea that you may have heard for him to never say the quarterback position ever again. Andy and I are making these bonus Yacht Club shows once per week all the way through the summer and into next season. If you'd like to take the plunge, I do think it's fun. We are actually interviewing Rainn Wilson for this upcoming Monday's show. You can find details about how to subscribe to that one at harrisfootball.com. Now, over here on the ad-supported sign, certainly there's one story that is hanging over the NFL from the past week or so. It's Mike Vrabel. It's Dianna Russini. I'm going to guess that by now a lot of you know that Dianna Russini has quote-unquote resigned from her job at The Athletic after a long tenure at ESPN. I did not know her at ESPN. She apparently started there quite literally the last month that I worked there. So I have never met her and I do not know her. I certainly know people who know her. I think we probably can all agree that the statement she put out upon her resignation, which was probably actually a firing, that statement was crafted by a lawyer and did not seem particularly honest. We all saw the photos. We know what was probably going on. And you can say, I won't let this define my career, but it's pretty much going to define her career. This is a bright line that you cannot cross, even though, as I will discuss, it gets crossed in different ways all the time. But I do truly think that if anyone out there is trying to turn this into an injustice has been done to Dianna Russini, I think they're being hot take artists. In my opinion, she probably deserved to lose her job. The fact that Mike Vrabel won't suffer anything close to the same fate, in one part understandable, because it is the difference between being the person who's covering and the person who's being covered. But of course is also, on the other hand, part of a misogyny that runs rampant through the sport, through the world. And also, of course, you could argue that if Vrabel hadn't just led a wildly successful first season in New England, if this was Gerard Mayo at the end of his only season in charge, of course the Patriots would look at it differently, and it would be used against him probably as a case for his firing. As it is, Vrabel will get away with an extramarital affair, at least professionally he will, although I certainly think it's possible that Vrabel will have lost 2 rings in the span of 4 months, if you catch my drift. But, the sordid side of this, the personal, the individual side of this, isn't really what I'm that interested in. I think you could probably guess what I'm interested in. Over the years of this show, you've heard me refer to the insiders who cover the NFL as skin puppets and other unflattering things. I know Adam Schefter, or I knew him 10 years ago. I'm not in touch with him anymore. He's a nice guy. I don't know Ian Rappaport, Jay Glazer, whoever else you might think of. I do not admire their jobs. Shams Charania, Adrian Wojnarowski, all the people who race to be the first to break a story on social media. What this Dianna Russini thing illustrates is that this is a media story. And the idea that Russini has lost her credibility belies the fact that None of these quote-unquote insiders really ever had any credibility. In fact, Russini getting canned is probably good news for all these other quote-unquote journalists because, oh, thank goodness, the problem of media members getting too close to the teams and players they cover, woo, we really dodged a bullet there. That's over. It is patently not over. I want to ask you, yeah, you, the listener, what value do you think these insiders have in the way that you enjoy sports? I want to remind you how many times over the history of this show I've tried to caution you not to believe the late-breaking news about a contract or an injury or this team intends to trade somebody or this guy is definitely the starter. We do not have a believable or healthy ecosystem in our sports media. I'll put it more plainly. You typically hear somebody saying, consider the source. They mean, you want the source that's most informed. In the NFL, when we say consider the source, we should have a list of names that we don't believe. Schefter, Rappaport, Glazier, Tom Pelissero, Mike Garofalo. You know the names. Basically, anyone who relies on access to do their job. What a terrible job description. You have to be an absolute sycophant to players, to agents, to teams. You have to credulously report stories you know are either fully or partly BS, all so that you can be the one who breaks the number of years on Tyler Linderbaum's new contract 30 seconds faster than someone else. That's a horrible job. It pays well. I guess sleeping on a bed of gold bars makes it worth it. Russini is just the logical extension of what these other guys all have to do. Buster Olney, who is still with ESPN, who I did know a little bit back in the day, he had a quote from a couple days ago when all this came out. I'm just going to read you this quote in full. Quote, "The other day, I was having a conversation with an executive of a team who said, when I read a story, I can connect all the dots. This reporter has a relationship with this agency, and here's how the truth is being bent because of that relationship." I see it too, says Buster. I'm aware of what's going on behind the scenes, and that's the cost of all this. When you have these situations, and I'm not just talking about potentially personal relationships, I'm talking about the understanding that, hey, if I give you this quote-unquote scoop, then you can bend the number this way, and you can bend the truth that way. End quote from Buster Olney. Why am I saying all this? Honestly, I just think we need to make this subtext into text whenever we can. The only way this is ever going to change, or at least that we're going to become less hoodwinked by it, is to get it through our thick skulls to not be credulous and consider the source pejorative. I think and hope that because you listen to this show, you already understand the value in not believing every single line the NFL media wants to feed you. But I am never not surprised how many times I hear NFL observers whom I respect, they still accept the terms of the conversation being set by people who have an axe to grind. It's not always the most fun thing to approach every aspect of the NFL with cynicism, but I'll let you know when that starts not panning out for me. It's an incredibly cynical media ecosystem that's covering for an incredibly cynical league. When you watch and you listen to the chortling insiders who pretend they're doing analysis but are just carrying water for all the various stakeholders, you're bathing your brain in state-sponsored media. Diana Russini is just a logical extension of what all insiders do because of the devil's bargain. Show me someone who makes their living because of their connections in the league, I'll show you a liar. I'll show you someone whose opinion I don't trust. Whatever doubt you have about her, you should have about all of them. To use a bygone phrase, they're all Baghdad Bob. And you and I, we're not going to change that immediately, but we can tune our ears to it. We can change the way we receive information and change the sources we trust. Oh, Adam Schefter said this. Ian Rappaport said this. Oh, I was watching McAfee and they said this. Yeah, you're being sold a bill of goods by skin puppets doing the bidding of people who are not particularly interested in the truth. The more we realize this, the better decisions we can make for fantasy, and frankly, the better decisions and happier football fans will all probably be.
Today's kickoff.
Okay, on today's show, as promised, our preview of the NFL Draft skill position players continues today. If you haven't yet caught up with 2 weeks ago, we did the rookie wideouts with Matt Waldman, and then last week we did the rookie running backs with Paul Perdichisi. Today we'll talk about the quarterbacks and the tight ends. I know this is utterly invaluable for me to help with upcoming dynasty rookie drafts of that kind of thing. And then, I got to start ranking the players for real for the whole 2026 season, and invaluable for that as well. The draft expert that I'll have on here in just a moment for today, Dalton Wasserman, late of Pro Football Focus, now the co-host of the Preferred Walk-On podcast. It's going to be fun. I thank you again so much for being here with me today. We are sponsored today by Wild Grain. You know I love them. If you love fresh bread, fresh pasta, fresh pastries, I could not recommend Wild Grain more. It's the first ever Bake from Frozen subscription box for sourdough breads, artisanal pastries, and fresh pastas. I'm here to tell you it's spectacular. Leave it in the freezer. You don't have to plan trips to the bakery to make sure you have fresh bread. I love being able to pop a loaf of sourdough into the oven directly from frozen. Everything bakes in under 25 minutes. You won't believe how good it is. If you're gluten-free, Wild Grain has a box for that. If you're vegan, they have a protein box now. Their Belgian waffles, spectacular, snickerdoodle cookies, raspberry white chocolate cheesecake. It is all so good. Plus, when you go to wildgrain.com/Harris, you'll get $30 off your first box and free croissants in every box when you start your subscription. The croissants as part of an egg sandwich, my goodness, very, very good. So that's $30 off your first box and free croissants in every box. Break out of a rut. Get some amazing bread and pasta and pastries in your life. Wildgrain.com/Harris.
Today's guest.
And today's guest, it's Dalton Wasserman. And if I was having Dalton on a month ago or so, I would be saying it's Dalton from Pro Football Focus. But stuff has happened at PFF that isn't the greatest in the world, and I'll ask Dalton about it in a second. He is currently the host of, or co-host of, the Preferred Walk-On podcast. So if you like what we talk about here, subscribe to Preferred Walk-On. It's another college-type podcast for you to listen to, and lots of great insight. Dalton, thanks. First of all, thank you very much. It's your maiden voyage here on the show. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I appreciate you big time having me on here, Chris. And like you mentioned, still keeping the college coverage going with Max Chadwick on the Preferred Walk-On channel on YouTube. So like and subscribe to that for all your year-round college football needs there.
Exactly. And also you can follow Dalton. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put Preferred Walk-On in the show notes too. Follow him on Twitter at CFB_Dalton, college football _Dalton. We're here to talk with you about the other positions. I've done Matt Waldman with the receivers 2 weeks ago, Paul Perdichisi with the running backs last week. We're going to talk quarterbacks. We're going to talk tight ends. Probably wind up not being a great quarterback class, although who knows. And it sounds like it could be a pretty good tight end class, even though it's obviously in fantasy the worst position ever designed by humans. But before we get to any of that, just a word. I mean, I'll just say, I'm very sorry for what happened at PFF, and you're welcome to. I'm curious what you can say and what, yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it wasn't, for as much as happened, and obviously there was the day when a whole boatload of us were posting, and it was our last day and all of that. Was it relatively sudden? Sure, but I mean, sometimes that's just the business of it, right? I mean, a company, or at least that 80% of it gets sold, and that's just kind of how it goes when the new company doesn't necessarily have the need for consumer and content and that sort of thing. So it wasn't, I told a bunch of our guys this at the time, and it still rings true, is that it wasn't out of any sort of failure on our part or anything that we didn't do right or anything like that. Even in just the, because and the fun part for me is, I was on both sides of the company at different times. I started out on the data side and grading games and doing all that for 4 years, and then moved over to the content side. So I had a really good idea of what both sides of that looked like. And, PFF grades are still going to exist. They still have the website going and all that. And I'll just tell you, just so many great people that I got to work with on both sides. Between the data team, you just couldn't meet a better group of people that are just the tape junkies that go through football for endless hours a week. There was sometimes I was still jealous of them. I'm like, man, that's all you got to do is just sit at the desk and watch football all day, man. It rocks. It was so much fun for that 4 years. And then the last couple of years, and to me, a big thing for me was it was such a new opportunity because it was my first media type job. Like I'd never been on camera before until I was able to do all that with Max and Trevor and the writing. I'd never really done a whole lot of that before either. So really fun to just get in, obviously, for 6 years and just do a football related job, and hopefully we can keep it going here. But no, I mean, nothing but respect, man. But for everybody that I worked with, I know there's some people that are still there. The data team and those guys are still going to do what they do best. And it was a lot of fun for 6 years. And at the end of the day, again, it wasn't any sort of failure. It's just business is business,
I do know. I've been through a bigger media company. ESPN didn't get bought. It just got to the point where I was a little too annoyed to stay there. So I certainly know what you're talking about. I'm sure some of the PFF people listen. Hello, shout out to you guys, the ex-PFF people. My thoughts are with all of you guys. And also, I know a lot of people who just, are in media, listen to the show. I bet you could ring up Dalton. I bet you could maybe give him a buzz at some point here. Prefer to walk on. Just subscribe to that. You get everything you need to know. All right, so we're going to talk quarterbacks in this upcoming draft that begins 1 week from tonight. We know who the number 1 overall pick is going to be. It'll be Fernando Mendoza. No drama there. Not even as much drama as with the Titans and Cam Ward last year. There were still people last year who were insisting maybe wouldn't be Cam Ward. I think those people kind of gave up on Mendoza. How do you feel about that in your overall assessment of Mendoza, his dream season at Indiana, an absolute delight / goofball at the microphone? Do you feel like in any other year there's no chance this guy would be the one, or are you feeling like no, he actually could wind up proving worthy of that top spot?
He can prove himself worthy for sure. I think there are some years where he wouldn't be. I don't have him necessarily in the Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams type of prospect tier. I think when you talk about 2 years ago, that epic quarterback class that we had with Williams and Jaden Daniels and Drake May all going top 3. I don't know that he's quite there with them, but I think he could be at the top of that second group that you talk about from that 2024 class of Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix. Mendoza might fit in right at the top of that group. And then, if you want another comparison to last year, I think there's a chance that he would have gone ahead of Cam Ward, right? I mean, Cam Ward, very good prospect, not perfect necessarily, a long history of, being kind of loose with the ball security, and he's got to clean up some fundamentals and things like that. But Mendoza's a guy, I think what I really like about him the most is you can see the year-to-year progression from his first year starting at Cal to his second year and then to this year, just the little things that he's improved, right? The footwork, the mechanics, the decision-making, everything just improved little by little. And I think this is still an ascending player. I think by the end of his rookie contract, I'm not going to guarantee any MVPs or anything, right? I don't know if he's at that level, but I think by the end of his rookie contract, he could be a top 8 to 10 quarterback. I think a lot like the guy he's going to be playing with, and Kirk Cousins was when he was in his prime. He was somewhere between the 8th and 10th best quarterback in the league. I think Mendoza can get there as long as the Raiders can build it right.
So it's interesting. That's probably the part that I overlook the most is, you are a film guy. I should say that because the people listening are tapeworms. They expect people to be familiar with the games and not just the, how they play and how they run around in their underwear. But I really try to downplay situational stuff for NFL teams from year to year because it just changes so much from year to year. But the Raiders of it all, the fact that we are trusting Mendoza's development we'll take Clint Kubiak. He has done good things. I wouldn't, there are a lot of guys I could name in the NFL who I would trust more than Clint Kubiak. I'm not trying to tell you it's absolutely perfect, but the Raiders of it all gives me a little bit of pause that if there's a way to screw it up, they might be able to screw it up. If you're going to screw up Mendoza, what would that look like in the NFL?
To me, it's more so about, because I think Kubiak and Mendoza, and especially with Kirk Cousins there as a mentor, I think that's a really good development group when you talk about just in the quarterback room. I think the bigger part of this is going to be on John Spytek and how he develops the rest of this team, right? Filling in the holes on the offensive line. I think having Ashton Ginty there, obviously a difficult rookie year for him, but having Ginty there and having a legitimate run game there, that was big for Mendoza at Indiana this year. And you have balance in your offense, and Kubiak's going to want to do that. When he was with the Seahawks last year, they ran the ball at the second highest rate in the NFL, right? So I think the bigger part is going to be on Spytek to build this offensive line, find him a number one receiver at some point, because they don't really have that on the roster right now, though, of course, they have Brock Bowers at tight end, and that helps a lot. And then building this defense, right? What you want to do for a young quarterback is make it so he doesn't have to carry your football team, right? I think you saw that a lot with Caleb Williams getting into year two. Year one, it felt like, man, he's got to carry this team. There's too many flaws. And in year two, Ben Johnson comes in, he builds the run game. They build the offensive line. The defense forces turnovers. So it's always about the environment and the supporting cast too, especially for a young kid. Hopefully you can develop him to the point where he can carry you through big moments and big games and playoff games and things like that. But early on, I think the bigger X factor in this is going to be the GM, John Spytek, just building the right environment for Mendoza to succeed.
I mean, that's true with literally every prospect, though. Like, how could they screw him up? How could this particular guy, how does he get messed up, do you think? Or do you think enough of him that this is all situational development?
He's such a fearless competitor, and he's so willing to stand in there and take hits and make throws that I think the big thing early, and again, it's big for pocket quarterbacks, and he's a pretty good athlete, even at 6'5" and 236. But I think the biggest thing, he's so willing to stand in there and compete and make throws and take hits that he's the type of quarterback to me that maybe if your offensive line, if it looks like it did last year, with this Raiders team with Geno Smith at the helm, then you're talking about a guy who's going to stand there and compete. You don't want him to get hurt. I think that would be the big thing. You don't want him to get hurt. And then, when guys start getting hit a lot, the footwork gets out of whack. And he spent so much time in his college career fixing and tightening up the footwork that's the reason his accuracy was so elite at Indiana last year. So to me, that's always a big concern. But with Mendoza, especially as willing as and as competitive as he is, he's going to stand in there and take the shots and stare down the barrel and make the throws. But at the end of the day, you don't want him getting hit too much, and you don't want him to be his own worst enemy back there.
That's a great point. That is definitely not true of everybody. Like, he can be, a young quarterback prospect who could be their own worst enemy, not only get hurt, but just develop bad field reading habits because he's always rushed and it just sort of always gets sped up. And that's interesting analysis. Not going to spend as much time as the other members of this on this quarterback class because I don't think any of them are really expected to be great, but maybe I've seen your ranks. I kind of don't think you're going to disagree with that statement. But Ty Simpson, on the one hand, led the nation in big time throws, quote unquote. So that's good. But on the other hand, he's doing it with a pretty darn good cast and hard to say that he was ever at a talent disadvantage at Alabama. I've seen Daniel Jones with less mobility as a comp, which does not sound amazing to me.
He's got a better arm than Daniel Jones. I think he's as far as the arm talent goes, I think he's got a better ability to stretch the ball downfield. And I think, look, when Simpson is confident and he's protected back there in the pocket, that's what he is. He's a guy who attacks the middle of the field. He's a guy who's able to attack downfield. I think even at 6'1" and having relatively average size, I think he's got a better arm than people give him credit for, especially when he's got time in the pocket to really unleash it. The big thing you're going to get with Simpson, if he's protected and he's in the right environment, is that you can tell he's a coach's son, right? He sees the field. He does see the field like an NFL quarterback, right? Especially when things are pretty static pre-snap and he knows what windows he has to work with. He can deliver with some real confidence. That's where those big-time throws, those 30 big-time throws come in last year, is that when he's confident, his feet are set, he will let it rip. I mean, there's no question about it. The big thing with Simpson, to me, is more so mentally handling pressure. You saw against big-time SEC defenses, the Georgias, the Oklahomas, even the South Carolinas of the world, where he had that feel of when teams started to blitz him a lot, it was finding those answers quickly and then not predetermining them too much and forcing himself into turnovers, right? So, Simpson's the type of prospect that for me, I would hope that he can go to a situation where he could sit a year and kind of just calm down a little and make sure his feet are set in the pocket against all the different looks he's going to see week to week in the NFL. But when he's throwing with confidence, he's really good. I just think he needs a little bit more time to do that consistently.
Yeah, that's the thing that you said about we would love for these guys to go to a place where they don't have to start right away. That's code for he's not ready, which not code. You're saying he's not ready, but it's also true of everybody but Mendoza in this draft, correct?
I would agree with that. I think Simpson is closer to it than the rest of the guys below him. I think there's a big gap below Simpson, because I finished my top 100 big board yesterday, and I have Simpson at, I believe, 36 is kind of that borderline first, second round pick, and then I don't have another quarterback until the 90s. So, I mean, Simpson, I think, is clearly the second best guy, but I still think there's a little bit to go and just a little more poise that needs to be had in the pocket more consistently.
And I guess, we don't know the landing spot right now as of our recording this. If he's a late first round pick, if he's a second round pick, probably not going to be viewed as a savior. So your criticism is probably warranted. So I'm going to run through some guys pretty quickly because, like you said, we're probably not looking for fantasy purposes. We're probably not looking at huge impact. I think it matters if you're a dynasty superflex and you're listening to this show, you want to know the general Dalton's feeling about these guys. So Garrett Nussmeier, I remember the name. I remember going into 25, people were saying potential Heisman, potential number 1 overall pick, but LSU was kind of a disaster last year. Brock Purdy is the ceiling comp that I hear, but it feels to me that when people are comping someone to Brock Purdy, what they're really saying is, I don't know why Brock Purdy's any good at all, and so guys who I think suck, we're going to compare him to Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I mean, Nussmeier, he's QB3 for me. He's the only other guy I have in the top 100. And I think the situation, you mentioned the dynasty part of it, I think we should be on the lookout for him if he gets to go to a place, kind of like I said with Simpson, but where there's an older veteran quarterback he could sit behind for a year or two, right? Think about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Think about, I think, the Rams, right? Maybe if they take a shot on him, if they get him in round 3 or 4, would make some sense where he can just kind of get his confidence back. Because you just mentioned it. Everything went wrong with LSU's offense this year. Between the offensive line, they had no run game whatsoever. Nussmeier was trying to battle through injuries after a while. The coaching situation was a mess. I mean, just everything went wrong for LSU's offense. And what he is at the end of the day is a guy who, another guy, kind of like Simpson, when he's clean in the pocket, he's a gunslinger. He's going to let it rip. He's going to let it rip into tight windows. And his dad is, the Saints offensive coordinator right now. So, I mean, you look at what, the pedigree that he has and, him sitting behind Jaden Daniels at LSU and getting reps and then 2 years as a starter. I mean, there's a lot to like about Nussmeier, but he's a guy to me between the injuries and then it just looked like a lack of confidence. And after a while, this was the example too, where he got hit so much that you could see him start to shy away and get rid of the football before he wanted to. So I think if he gets to sit behind a veteran a couple of years, I think he's got the best shot of the rest of the guys to maybe be a starter down the line.
A quick break to thank Blue Land for sponsoring. I use Blue Land cleaning products here aboard the yacht. I'll tell you why. There is too much plastic in our lives, too much waste, too many microplastics that wind up in what we eat and drink. Blue Land was an easy switch for me, and now I don't throw away so much plastic. Hand soap, dish detergent, laundry detergent, toilet bowl cleaner, glass cleaner, surface cleaner. Blue Land sent me 1 bottle for each of those, and I reuse that forever. When I run out of a particular cleaner, they send tablets, dissolve them in the water. The clean is amazing, and we reuse the bottle. This is something small that can turn into something big and microplastic free. Blue Land is a certified B Corp and Leaping Bunny cruelty-free certified as well. Their formulas are EPA Safer Choice certified, and many products have also earned Cradle to Cradle's Gold Material Health Certificate. I can tell you, feels powerless out there sometimes, but this is a change we can make to our lives. It's better for us and it's better for the planet. Go to blueland.com/Harris and celebrate Earth Month. Beginning this Friday, April 17th, you'll get up to 30% off. Make the switch. Good for the planet, good for your family, and starting on the 17th, up to 30% off. blueland.com/Harris. Okay, we're back with Dalton, and we're going to clean up the rest of this quarterback class and then get on to the tight ends. 3 names I'll throw at you kind of simultaneously because they're all names that I know because they were very widely beloved before they ever played a snap in college football, and then wound up having some success in college, but definitely their pro stars faded. We have Cade Klubnik from Clemson. We have Drew Allar from Penn State, Carson Beck from, people remember, Georgia, and then Miami. You're not ranking these guys, and you've already said on the show that they're not even close to number 3. But if one of those 3 winds up becoming like an above average NFL starter, which one of those 3 would surprise you the least?
An above average starter. I have Klubnik. They're very close. I have Klubnik rated the highest. He's the best athlete of the 3 of them pretty easily. And look, I mean, his 2024 season when he led Clemson to the playoff, he was really good. You talk about a vertical passer he really knows how to layer the ball downfield, especially down the seams and things of that nature. I think he's kind of like a poor man's Jackson Dart was another one that came up to. He's not quite as well built as Jackson Dart, but he kind of plays in that same style where he can be a vertical passer with some athleticism that could work. I think he's probably right now. Some would say Allar has the highest ceiling because of his arm, but his accuracy is just all over the place. I would probably say Klubnik, but I think all 3 of them are definitely. Or I should say this: Klubnik and Allar are more developmental. I think Beck is kind of the classic backup type quarterback.
Yeah, I mean. It's funny. Who was the Georgia kid who went to the Rams?
Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, Stetson Bennett. I mean, not that that all I don't. Everybody knows I don't know these guys. I don't watch a lot of college football, and I'm trying to learn from the experts who do. And so it's a dumb association in my head, but I always kind of had the Stetson Bennett, Carson Beck association in my head. So maybe you're not.
They're a little bit
disavowing me.
They're a little bit different. I actually like Beck a little bit better. Bennett was a little undersized, but he was a little better athlete than Beck. Beck is like your classic, think about in the Jared Goff style pocket passer. Just not as much arm talent as a guy like Jared Goff. Pretty average arm talent, but sees the field, gets rid of the ball quickly. If there was a guy that, if you subscribe to that theory of, your backup should be the same as your starter, then maybe Beck's Detroit's backup at some point.
Okay. So the name that I wanted to run by you, who is lower on your list, so I know really what your answer is here because I've seen your quarterback list. It's Taylen Green. I have a couple. I just think he's interesting. I don't know anything about him. I've never seen him play in my life. But all I'm reading what people are writing about this guy Taylen Green. He crushed the combine. I'm correct in that, right? He turned out to be like the physical freak among the quarterbacks.
Correct. Yeah. Oh, by far. One of the best ever.
Yeah. Right. And so it's so interesting to me. Maybe it reflects where the NFL is 3 years post Anthony Richardson, that Taylen Green really isn't getting any hype as a future guy. And these men are different. You can't just say Taylen Green is automatically Anthony Richardson. I have to imagine that if somebody who did what Taylen Green did in his underwear Olympics the year Anthony Richardson did it in his, maybe Green doesn't go in the first round, but I bet he doesn't go in whatever it's going to be, the 5th or the 6th. Talk to me about Taylen Green and whether this athletic freakiness ever has a chance of manifesting, and then maybe also is the NFL a little bit over this archetype at quarterback?
I don't know if they're over it because traits are always going to be king, especially among the draft scouts, right? It's something they look into so heavily. And Green is a little bit older. He's actually just a few months younger than Richardson, and Richardson was drafted, 3 years ago? So you look at Green being 23 years old, a little bit over, and he had a long journey in college between kind of playing. He was the starter at Boise State, and then he kind of wasn't, and it was a back and forth thing, and then going to Arkansas for a couple of years and really getting to play in Bobby Petrino's offense, especially, that got to maximize his skill set, right? I think the 2 big things, though, that you have to bring into the NFL to be a starting quarterback are accuracy and decision-making. Those are really his 2 biggest flaws. No question about it. The arm talent, I got to see it down at the Senior Bowl. The arm talent's there. He's got him and Allar probably have the 2 pure strongest arms in this draft. And Green, I mean, he can run like the wind. He was such a huge part of the run game in every offense that he played in, and a dangerous scrambler that can add something to your offense. But to me, it's kind of like Jalen Milroe last year, where you go, yeah, all the tools are there, but we got to clean up a lot of fundamental things here as a passer. But in the NFL, those are the 2 things that stick out to me that make him a late round pick. You have to have accuracy, you have to have decision making, and I was not very high on Richardson at the time. So those are the 2 things that to me he was missing. I think that's the same case with Green, but he's a heck of an athlete, man.
Yeah, good on you for being correct about Richardson. I kind of pooped all over him his rookie year when people were taking him in, QB8 in fantasy. Oh, what? It's a cheat code. It can never fail. I'll just say from my perspective, knowing some people in the NFL, I do think the star of this kind of player has faded a little bit. Not that they're not going to get taken. Jalen Milroe got taken, and 3 years down the road, after 2 off seasons of completely remaking what Milroe or this guy Green can do, maybe we'll be shocked that they developed skills that we didn't know that they had. But that's also development time that you could be spending on someone who has a much better chance to actually play. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all about where your organization is too. If if you're a Seattle and you can afford to bring in a Jalen Milroe, because we know we've got Sam Darnold, for a bit, right? That 3-year contract. If you're, a team, I think that was the danger with Richardson and the Colts, is that, I think it was maybe a couple of the first 2 or 3 games he didn't start, but after that, they just decided, all right, get in there, kid. And he wasn't ready, right? So it's always going to be a matter of, is the kid ready to run an NFL offense, to make the right decisions, to protect the football, all the little things that win you football games. That's what gets you on the field, not just your athletic ability.
Well, being picked 4th overall is probably what got him on the field.
Yeah. It comes with so much pressure and so much heat, especially that position. It's tough. It's tough not to.
That's right, and that's why we don't need to worry about it. That's why somebody taking a very long-term flyer on Taylen Green doesn't need to feel that kind of pressure. Obviously, they won't have to. Are there any other quarterbacks I have not brought up to this point who you think, that maybe somebody in a dynasty rookie draft might want to just have on the list for the later rounds?
I think if there's one guy that would be more fantasy relevant, take a look at Cole Payton out of North Dakota State. I'm not going to tell you I'm super high on him. I think he's another day 3 guy to me, but there have been top 100 rumors about him throughout this process. And he's a developmental guy. He played a lot, mostly in a wildcat role most of his career at North Dakota State, playing behind Cam Miller, who was an excellent quarterback for them as well. But he finally got to start this past year. I would argue he was the best quarterback in the FCS this year. Big guy, well-built. Saw him at the Senior Bowl, too. Lefty with a good arm and really, really good rushing ability. And that's what's really going to set him apart when it comes to fantasy. I wonder if there's even a place here for him to play early in his career, a Taysom Hill type of role, right, where he could get in a handful of snaps a game and be a real option type of threat. That's what he did at North Dakota State so well, was run the football and then throw it deep down the field. So a guy with some really good physical tools, and he's, again, a little bit older, spent a lot of time as kind of a backup wildcat sort of role, but he showed out this year in his 1 year starting for North Dakota State. And because of his athleticism and rushing ability, probably someone just to keep an eye on to see what the landing spot is for him.
We will do that, and I will put all the names that we discuss in today's show notes. So please, folks out there, don't crash your car trying to write down the name Cole Payton. What a tragic way to lose your automobile. That would not be the player that we should be giving up our car for. Tight ends. It's time for the worst position ever invented by humans. I say that the lore of the show is essentially that, there aren't really that many more tight ends anymore. George Kittle, really a tight end. Rob Gronkowski was a tight end. The rest of them are slot receivers. Why are we treating them separately? And Kenyon Sadiq probably is going to be no exception in terms of what NFL teams will expect him to be right away. I will admit, a tight end that's projected to be like a mid-first round draft pick, and the attendant hype that will come with that. It's a very difficult position to learn. This tends to be not my jam. This smells like Kyle Pitts to me. Kind of a 1-year wonder in college, and that 1 year wasn't even that great as far as I know, at least numbers wise. But he did light up the combine. How ready do you think Kenyon Sadiq is to be on the field, say 70% of the time in an NFL game and like a pretty regular contributor?
I think he can be on the field for that amount per game, but I think we do need to lighten the expectations a little bit. I don't see him as the same type of prospect as Brock Bowers, who was one of the greatest, if not the greatest college tight end ever, right? Colston Loveland, who we got at least about 2.5 years of just outstanding work from, blocking and receiving, even through a shoulder injury. Even Tyler Warren, who had such an outstanding year last year at Penn State, and then I thought he was really good for the Colts. Sadiq, the athletic capabilities are there for sure, but I see him as more of, for me personally, a late first, early second round guy. I believe I had him 33 on my big board, just right on that border. I'm with you. I just don't see him as quite as productive as those guys were, right? And maybe he goes higher because this is a draft class that's lacking on offensive, difference-making type of playmakers. But, I think the route running is still a little bit stiff. The speed is there for sure. He can get down the seam, and if you have an offense that can flex him out into the slot and send him down the seam a lot, I think he can be helpful for you, right? I think the blocking, certainly a willing blocker, he brings that anger, brings that aggression to the blocking, but I think I would like him in the NFL early on as more of a move type of guy, right? So if you had another tight end to pair with him, I think it'd be outstanding. I've seen the idea of Baltimore taking him to replace Isaiah Likely and get him in there with Mark Andrews. Schematically, I think it would be a really good fit there. So I think you have to have the right fit. Don't expect too much out of him too early. If you walk in there and you expect him to be Brock Bowers or Colston Loveland, I don't think that's coming, at least early on in his career. I still think there's some work to do.
I mean, we're vibing, you and I. I don't know this guy. I don't know him, but I just don't want people to get too excited about tight ends in general. This is a hard position, and almost everything you just said about Kenyon Sadiq could have been said about Kyle Pitts, number 4 overall pick, I believe. And where are we? We're still trying to talk ourselves into Kyle Pitts. That's not something that healthy people should do. Exactly one rookie tight end this decade has averaged more than 60 receiving yards per game. That would be Brock Bowers. And then, of course, for fantasy, Bowers goes way too high this past season and gets hurt. So it's just not a position that I particularly like endorsing early round picks for fantasy. In a dynasty draft, I didn't, this is sort of off the back of the envelope. I apologize for that, but you're smart, I can tell. Sadiq still probably does have to go in the first 12 picks of a dynasty rookie draft. Is that right? Are there enough receivers that you would be like, no, actually, I think he's more of a second in a dynasty draft?
I could see the case for back end of the first round there. I think when you look at the top 3 receivers, I would take ahead of him Lemon, Tyson, Tate, obviously Jeremiah Love. But I think the big thing about Sadiq and his chances to go first round there is just that you're so short on running backs. I mean, I don't, other than Love, I don't know how many other starters there really are going to be. I think it's a rough running back class when it comes to the depth. So he probably still works his way into the first round as consensus tight end 1 there. And I wouldn't think that there's another 8 to 10 receivers that would go ahead of him, especially the investment in dynasty. If you hit on a tight end, you're hitting for several years and you've got a big advantage when, like you've mentioned, it's such a thin position. I felt good last year having Trey McBride. I rode that to, I think, second or third place in my league, whatever I did. But, the Trey McBrides only come around so often. So, I think he would get into a first round. He'll be one of the first 12 guys taken.
We are sponsored by Leesa, the makers of My Mattress, one I've been sleeping on for a decade. If you've been waking up stiff and sore and it's been too long since you replaced your mattress, what can I say? I am an absolute sucker for Leesa. Anytime I have to sleep anywhere else, I miss my bed terribly. It is perfect for me. Of course, a bed is a very personal thing. What's great for me might not be great for you, which is why Leesa sends you a new bed and let you sleep in it for 120 nights. And if it's not perfect for you after 4 months, let them know. They will make it right. Leesa mattresses are designed and manufactured in the U.S. They've been awarded Best Hybrid and Best Memory Foam mattresses by Wirecutter. They donate thousands of mattresses every year to families in need. They partner with organizations like Clean Hub and Green Worms to help remove harmful plastic waste from the environment. And the mattress happens to be great. And right now at leesa.com, you can get 20% off all mattresses. And if you check out using the code Harris, that's another $50 off the top. For 20% off right now, go see what they've got, leesa.com. And for an extra $50 off, use that code Harris. We are back with Dalton, and we are making our way through the tight end prospects. We've hit the big name, but actually the tight end class is reputed to be kind of a good one. Would you agree with that assessment? Like, there's maybe not instant Hall of Fame type talent, but there's just a lot of guys who are going to be, over the course of their NFL careers, fairly productive.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think you have a lot of solid players. There's not the groundbreaking players that we had last year with Warren and Loveland, but I think somewhere between picks, probably 50 and 150, you're going to get a lot of them taken that can play a lot of different roles. I think teams are going to look into what type of player they want, but a lot of solid players in this group.
So Eli Stowers, I believe he's second on your list. I mean, even I knew Kenyon Sadiq's name. I only knew Eli Stowers' name because Andy Behrens, who co-hosts the Monday show with me, went to Iowa, and he was really mad because he saw the Iowa bowl game, and Vandy did not play most of their draft eligible guy, or the draft likely guys, so Stowers didn't play in that game. Another big slot guy, our buddy Matt Waldman likes Stowers more than Sadiq. Is that an outrageous opinion?
I don't think it's outrageous because I think the original gap between Sadiq and everyone else was too big to start with. I don't think it's outrageous. I still have Sadiq ahead of Stowers, more so because for now he is a better blocker, right? Stowers, I think something that's very interesting with Stowers is that he's so young at the position, right? He started out, he was a 4-star quarterback going to Texas A&M, and then he transferred to New Mexico State, and he was competing with his quarterback, Diego Pavia, for the starting quarterback role. And when Pavia won that, Stowers decided, okay, I'm going to move to tight end. So he hasn't even played 3 full seasons at the position yet. And I've seen a lot of different arguments for how Stowers' NFL career should go. Can he put on 10 more pounds and stay at tight end? Should he lose 10 pounds and switch to receiver because he's got such ability, he's such a good athlete, right? I mean, you saw that too. Another guy who had a historic combine. So a lot of different ways it can go, but there's no doubt he's got value as a receiver. And I think, it wouldn't shock me if 3 or 4 years from now we came back and looked at this class and said, man, Stowers turned into the best one because he developed the right way. I don't think it's that crazy to say. I wouldn't do it myself. I have Sadiq and actually Max Klare also ahead of Stowers for now, but I could see any of the 3 of them being the best guy out of this class.
Well, let's talk about Max Klare too as well then, another converted quarterback. Did he go back and forth? I think maybe he played at Purdue, then he played at Ohio State, and he finished up at Ohio State. I know that. But for a converted quarterback, unlike the other 2 guys that we've mentioned, he actually can block. Is that it? Do I have my my quote unquote scouting, in other words, stuff that I read before we started talking? Does that maybe give him the chance to be on the field a little bit more than those other guys?
Yeah, I think early on, Klare, he would have a better chance than Stowers to play every down. Early in his career, at least, as Stowers is still developing. Klare is a better blocker. And I actually think this year, I know, a lot of people were getting on Klare and even Ohio State about why wasn't he used more? What happened, right? I just think it was the way Ohio State was running their offense. And I think for Klare this year, even though he didn't put up the numbers he did at Purdue as a receiver, I think it's going to help his career long term. He got to do a lot of dirty work. His blocking got a lot better. And he really proved at Ohio State to me that he can be an every down type of tight end, a 3-down tight end that you really love to be that 2-way player. Plus, he's got the athleticism where anytime you want, you can put him out in the slot. You can run him down the field. You can do a lot of different things with him. So the potential with Klare is all there. We saw the receiving work at Purdue. We saw the balance type work at Ohio State. And I think he's someone who, to me, should go somewhere in the top 75. And I think he's got starting tight end potential a lot sooner than people think.
So that said, I do have a fondness for the Kittles of the world, for the guys who can stay on the field just because then they're on the field, and they are way more uncommon than than they ever used to be. I'm trying to think of somebody who isn't a superstar who fits that, like Tyler Higbee. That's like kind of he can block. I'm trying to come up with guys who are in the NFL, not superstars, but theoretically can stay on the field because they also can block. Is someone like Higbee a fair comp?
Him, I think about a Hunter Henry. I mean, depending on if you consider him superstar in his prime or whatever. Hunter Henry's another one where you just go, he's just been so solid for a long time, right? Maybe just for a long time, a top 10-ish tight end in the league, but a guy who can be out there for 3 downs as well. Dallas Goedert from Philadelphia. I know that's the thing though, is those guys, once you get those guys who are reliable 3-down tight ends, they do turn into stars because they knew a little bit of everything, right? You think about Dallas Goedert. I think about an up-and-coming guy like Tucker Kraft before he got hurt with Green Bay, right? Those are the guys where you can go, man, he's out there all 3 downs and he's constantly a threat, run, pass, play action, however you need it to be. So those guys, I mean, they're still, I know there's less of them than ever, but they're still extremely valuable. I think Klare could eventually be one of those guys.
All right. Well, that's probably why you have Klare ahead of Stowers, which you have him close, but that's your thinking. I like it. A guy who is higher on your list that I know nothing about than other lists that I've seen, this Jack Endries guy. Is he, I mean, maybe just give me your spin. Like, do you feel like he gets underrated by people who are in your business?
So tight end is the position that, or one of the positions that draft scouts are going to lean more heavily on the athletic traits, the combine and things of that nature, because there's a feeling of this untapped potential depending on their usage and stuff in college. Endries is not the A-level athlete that Sadiq and Stowers and Klare are. He's more of a B to B plus type of athlete who fits the reliable tight end mold a little bit more, right? I think his change of direction and route running is closer to decent than it is elite, but he's got excellent hands. He's a solid blocker. He's got multiple years of solid production, especially 2 years ago at Cal. He was really good, and he could show he could play in the slot a little bit. He's probably, for me, a late round 3 or round 4 guy, but I think a high end outcome for me with Endries, the goal would be to get him to be something like Dalton Schultz for the Houston Texans, who has carved out a good career for himself, also a former 4th-round pick. If Endries became something like that, I think it'd be a really good career, and he could be reliable. Maybe not a guy like a Travis Kelce or anything like that can take a game over with just the freakish, nature that he has. But Endries, to me, feels reliable. He's not as flashy. I do think he's going to get drafted pretty early on day 3. He's not as flashy as some of the other guys, but he's a solid football player all around. I'm telling you, he might have the best hands out of any of these guys in the class.
Yeah, I remember. I went to grad school at Texas. I saw some Texas games this year. It's rare for me to actually have personal experience with a player, and I'm now remembering Endries as. That whole pass offense was such a mess for so long in the season, but I do remember him as being the one, like when they threw it to him, I was like, oh, he's going to catch it, as opposed to many of the other people on that team. So, yeah. How about Justin Joly, a smaller guy, but apparently another one with really good ball skills. Do I have that one right?
Yeah, good ball skills. You talk about contested catches. You talk about making people miss after the catch. He's a really good athlete. Now, I think you have to find a place for him to go that maybe already has that more traditional tight end. He can play in kind of the same role that Harold Fannin did last year, where you had David Njoku, and then they could move Fannin around wherever they needed him, right? You can use him in screens. You can send him down the seam. He's a really good athlete with so much production at UConn and even at NC State, where it just was consistently at every level of competition. It was like, man, this guy can play. This guy can really play. He's got ball skills. He's got athleticism. He can make plays after the catch. So I think another guy who, because of the fact that he's a little bit shorter and he's got kind of that move role that you need somebody for him, right? I think about Harold Fannin Jr. last year. You think about, Isaiah Likely. You think about Jonnu Smith, just those guys that you go, okay, it's a different role. There's a certain role and a certain offense for him, especially in a lot of 2 tight end sets. Just got to find the right team. But I think even like Isaiah Likely is a guy I think about and what he's done for the Ravens and now he'll do for the Giants over the next couple of years. Just find ways to move around and get him the football 4 or 5 times a game.
Yeah, when you compare him to Fannin, that you're speaking our language. We loved him right away on film as a rookie. When you're speaking, I see Jonnu Smith as the comp, like it across many other folks, when they're listing comps, and like I guess if you get to Jonnu Smith where his helmet isn't actually accidentally on backwards, Jonnu Smith who can think. I guess I could wind up being excited. Going back to Harold Fannin as a prospect last year, I did this exact exercise last year, having never heard of Harold Fannin, small college guy, didn't know anything about him. But I would, in advance of the tight end discussion for the show, I did reading for Harold Fannin. And what I remember so clearly was people talking like he was just some sort of freak, and not in a good way. Like he runs weird. He waddles, and he's just a stranger prospect than people were used to. Do you remember that evaluation for him?
Oh, he was one of the most controversial players of last year, because when you watch his tape and in Bowling Green and all that, you just go, this is the best player on the field. And even in big games where Bowling Green played Penn State and Texas A&M, he absolutely tore him to shreds. And you don't have any of these concerns. And he's making people miss in the open field, the screen game. He gets vertical, corner routes, seam routes, things like that. You watch him play football and you go, this is the best guy out here. This guy rocks, right? And then, during the process, again, you get into the draft process and it's, he had kind of an average combine. and he goes to the Senior Bowl, and he didn't have the best Senior Bowl out there, and they had him playing fullback a little bit and things like that. But for as much as the Cleveland Browns are what they are, especially offensively, he went to the right place with the right role where you had a David Njoku there. Fannin could play in more of that movable kind of role, and he's just a guy. There's just some guys, and we do this every year with certain prospects. They just get on a football field and they're really good, man. I know the testing. I know it correlates. I know there's a lot of different things. And you don't want all these outliers and this, that. But some guys are just darn good at football. And anytime I would turn on the Bowling Green tape, Harold Fannin was the best player on the field by far. I love that he got a shot. I think, was he a third-round pick for the Browns? And then love that he had just the rookie year that he had, because so much fun to watch just on the football field, right? And it just shows you that it's not the 100% correlation that everything at the combine and all that's the only thing that matters. You got to watch the tape as well.
Hallelujah. That's why this is going great. I'm loving having you as a guest, because that's exactly how I feel about the NFL. And we get so many people who run their NFL evaluations via spreadsheet, and I don't think they're very good at their jobs, but you're obviously very good at yours. So you heard it here first. Dalton Wasserman has told you that Justin Joly is Harold Fannin and is guaranteed to have that level of production in 2026. Nope, that's what I heard. Sorry.
If you throw it out there and all of a sudden I'm right, then we'll feel
Guaranteed.
Pretty good about it come December, won't we? We'll feel pretty good about it.
We sure will. So we'll keep an eye on where Joly gets drafted. Are there any other tight ends that you'd like to mention, just as having? I mean, I think for the purposes of taking young tight ends in a dynasty draft, probably we'd just be looking for the even though the floor stinks, we'd be looking for ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at receiving, I mean, to be honest with you, I think there's going to be a ton of tight ends that are going to get flyers on them in round probably 4, 5, and even 6 in this draft. That look, there's guys who are talented. Some of them, lean more towards the blocking. Some lean more towards the receiving. I think about a guy who's maybe a tight end in name only, but if you wanted this year's maybe a Rondé Gadsden type of player, Michael Trigg from Baylor, who's in that offense was basically just a receiver, and he's not a great blocker, but it's essentially what a Rondé Gadsden was at Syracuse. Been a ton of hype on Oscar Delp, who can play kind of an inline role, and he's a darn good athlete himself. Never really produced at a high level at Georgia, which is, maybe the most concerning part, but Oscar Delp is going to get a shot from Georgia. Eli Raridan from Notre Dame, really good athlete who dealt with some injuries. A guy that I like, Tanner Koziol from Houston, solid athlete, 3-sport athlete in high school, who's a red zone monster. You want a guy who could score a bunch of touchdowns in, was it Robert Tonyan I'm thinking of, who just scored a touchdown like every week that one year, right? Like Tanner Koziol could be. There's a lot of really good athletes. Daquan Wright is another one to keep an eye on, really good after the catch. A lot of really good athletes at this position that are going to be taken in rounds like 3, 4, and 5 that I think teams are going to be looking at to develop. So, what you have with this tight end class is just maybe not Brock Bowers, Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren. Some people think Sadiq is that. I'm not in that boat, but I think the value in this class really is rounds 3, 4, and 5. So, as someone, as a fantasy player, someone looking, for dynasty especially, look at all the guys in the mid rounds that go from rounds 3, 4, and 5 and just check their landing spots and see what type of opportunities they could get early. Because we saw it last year with a guy like a Rondé Gadsden, where it was just like, man, all the other tight ends for the Chargers are hurt and they need something out of this position. And they got it. There was a handful of weeks there where Gadsden got raging hot. He was a good fit with Justin Herbert as a threat down the seam. So I would just keep an eye on this class as a whole, but especially in that round 3 to 5 range for sure.
You don't know this, but everybody listening just fainted. They hit their fainting couches because you used the name Robert Tonyan. Your very first appearance, and you give us the vapors with Robert Tonyan, who we loved so much because, he made a kind of a mockery of tight end in fantasy, which is exactly what I want. The only thing that could have been better is if you'd said Gary Barnidge.
Oh boy, now you're going way back. Wow, you're going way back. It's him and who's the other Browns one. Remember Jordan Cameron too? I don't know why I thought of that too, but Gary Barnidge, man, oh man, yeah, that's another one right there. Wow, we're going back.
Yeah, Gary Barnidge was actually good for 1 year in fantasy. We called him Mashed Potato Mountain because when you're riding the gravy train, you stop questioning it. You just take the gravy train up Mashed Potato Mountain, and that's Gary Barnidge. Jordan Cameron was a lot of promise and never quite delivered. But I mean, trust me, you are officially in my listenerdom good graces. They're gonna love you. And I appreciate having had you on. It was awesome to talk to you. If you loved what you heard out of Dalton, please follow him on Twitter at CFB_Dalton. Give him a follow and a listen with the Preferred Walk-On podcast. And is my show obviously doesn't have video component. Does the Preferred Walk-On? Are you also on camera for that one?
Yes, we're on YouTube for that one. We're reworking on some audio transition with the audio. We're trying to work on that here pretty soon, but still on YouTube, the Preferred Walk-On College Football Show.
Fantastic. Wonderful job. I now feel like I actually can go to a dynasty draft and actually not embarrass myself. I now understand some of these names. I appreciate that very much. I hope the listeners feel similarly. I'm sure they do. A great pleasure to meet you and to have you on, and best of luck going forward. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Appreciate it big time, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
And thank you so much for listening. Now, I know it was killing you. I know you heard the name Robert Tonyan mentioned and you didn't get to hear the drop. I can't do them live as I'm interviewing. So, but who cares about the details? Just play it. Play it, Harris. Play it.
It's a quest for Tonyan. Harris, help me find a tight end.
I'd love to. I feel like we just did. We found some tight ends. Thank you so much for listening. Oof, that was like it was a sneeze. I had to get that out. Let me thank the 3 sponsors that also supported today's show, because without them, there would have been no program today. We had Wild Grain, Blue Land, and Lisa. And if you were interested in what I had to say about today's sponsors, it's wonderful when you use the codes and URLs. I put their details in today's show notes. All the current sponsors are listed at harrisfootball.com. When you remember that we have a sponsor that would fit a need that you have, if you have the means, that's how this whole thing keeps going. I know how many of you go out of your way to support a sponsor when the need arises. It just means so much, because honestly, there would not have been a show for so many years without your support in that regard. So thank you so much for that. So that's going to do it for this week's episode on the free side. So coming up next week, it's going to be a double shot of Andy Behrens. We're going to do the Yacht Club on Monday, Rainn Wilson, Dwight from The Office. Probably not going to talk too much about The Office, but talk about the Seahawks, because I'm a big Seahawks fan. And I'm in a fantasy league with him, and we'll ask him about various things related to that. So Rainn will be on Monday, and then coming up on Thursday, Andy's going to come on the free side, and we're going to follow through on a tradition that we've been doing for the past several years. We're going to redraft the rookies from last year and see how close or dissimilar our results are from how they actually went in last year's draft. That's a fun show as well. Until then, thanks again so much for listening. Your hat is awesome. You're awesome for wearing it. I will talk to you next time.
The Harris Football Podcast's opening theme is Under the Gun by Apex Manor. The closing theme is Say Yes by The Wellspring. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode.